Hi, everybody. Glad to have you back for the next asset building cohort onboarding session. We've got a lot to cover today on the tips for success for supplement. Let's go to the next slide and take a look at our agenda. So the first thing we're going to do is do a little bit of a review of some of the important things about what is required in the MTW supplement, but mostly we're going to be focusing on how to deal with that MTW supplement. We'll be reminding you about the things that are required in that supplement. We'll be talking more about public engagement and actually going to have a really exciting opportunity to hear a voice of experience on that subject with a guest speaker who can talk about public engagement. We're going to be giving you some concrete examples about how to strengthen your MTW supplement, so to help it really sail through that review process. And we'll be highlighting some of the common issues and mistakes that HUD has been seeing when people have submitted prior supplements to help you avoid those kinds of pitfalls. As we go through, you'll see some exclamation points. Those are really highlighting some tips and things you'll want to be looking out for. You'll also see those little attachment icons. Those are documents you're going to need to be preparing prior to being ready to submit your supplement. So be watching for those icons as we go through. We're going to do a few quick knowledge checks as we go through to help make sure that you're really following the discussion and understanding the content. But this is going to be, as I said, a pretty action-packed agenda. We will pause for questions in a few places, but we may not be able to get to everything. So definitely put your questions in the chat. We have folks on call to be answering in the chat if possible. Anything we don't get to, we will either get back to this group in writing, or there's going to be an office hours in a month or so. And at that session, we can go into more detail on any of the questions that we didn't get to in this session. So with that, Autumn, let me turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Autumn Gold, and I am a Housing Innovation Specialist with the MTW team. So we will start with the MTW supplement reminders. A few reminders, and notice, I just want you to notice the exclamation point that Janice talked about. These are really tips for success. The MTW supplement is a supplement to the PHA plan. When you submit your PHA plan, as you always have, some agencies don't have to submit it annually, those qualified under 550 units, but becoming an MTW agency doesn't change that. But MTW agencies must always submit their MTW supplement to the PHA plan annually, even if you don't have new activities or waivers. It's important to remember to submit the PHA plan with the supplement. The supplement is part of the PHA plan and they're submitted together. So I like to say they're tied together, they're married, they need to stay together. In the past, we kind of let everybody, submit them as they were coming in, especially the new ones. But we really want to emphasize submitting the PHA plan and the supplement at the same time. The plan goes directly to the field office and the supplement goes directly into the MTW online system. The plan, and be sure to submit the supplement at the same time. I keep saying that. Always submit the MTW supplement no later than 75 days to the start of your agency's fiscal year, just like the PHA plan. It's the same protocol, same practice that you're used to. We're just adding one special piece to it. Be sure not to submit the supplement until the PHA plan is ready. And always submit the MTW supplement no later than 75 days. The supplement submission in the first year can be especially complicated. We'll work through some of the timing examples later in the webinar and to answer any questions that come up from the last webinar. on how to do the MTW supplement submission if you have a PHA plan that is in the works. The supplement submission, you need to wait for approval from the field office before you implement any activities. It's very important that you wait. Agency specific and safe harbor waivers, however, may be approved later, and because they require a more extensive review by HUD. The field office will let you know if there's been a decision about an approval or disapproval of each request. In the waivers, some may be approved, some may not be approved. They may all be approved, but it is a special process through HUD. So you may get a conditional approval pending the waivers coming later. Okay. A few more reminders. You'll need to wait for approval from the field office before implementing your activities. The agency specific waivers may come later. Once the supplement is approved, you'll receive a letter from HUD, and then you must update the admin and ACOP before implementing those activities. And we'll explain the timing of updating your policies a little bit later. The MTW operations notice is your first resource. Please get familiar with it, read it, put it on your desktop, print it, make notes on it. It really is your guiding document for submitting your supplement. Appendix 1 describes the MTW waivers that are associated with the activities and safe harbors, which many agencies will be using as the basis for the MTW supplement content, especially in this first year. Appendix 2 of the notice provides detailed information on conducting impact analysis and creating your hardship policies when required as a safe harbor. Those are part of the MTW supplement process, and we will talk about those more later as well. Section 7A2, the MTW supplement to the BHA plan in the operations notice are requirements around the timing for submitting the MTW supplement and the required public process, which we will explain that as well. And specific to the asset building cohort, which you guys are, please read the asset building cohort selection notice and the information specific to the requirements and steps that you will need to take in submitting your request. Throughout today's webinar, we are going to ask a few quick questions, key points that we want to make sure that everybody remembers as they walk away from the webinar today. They aren't hard, they're easy questions. They are helping to make sure that you guys get the key takeaways in the midst of a lot of information that we're about to dive into. So here's your first quick question. And please enter your answers in the chat box. What resources should you turn to first for references in regards to all things MTW? Please answer in the chat box. Good, good. Everyone's saying operations notice? Operations notice, that's great. So the operations notice, and particularly Appendix 1, Appendix 2, Section 7, and the asset building cohort selection notice. So good job, everybody. Okay, here is a great visual. I'm very visual, so this is a really good resource. It is the MTW review process with little icons. So let's take a high-level look at the steps in the process for creating your supplement and getting it approved. We're going to take you through the process from the beginning to the end. So public engagement. This is when you engage with your stakeholders early and often. Different than just the PHA plan, we really want you to take extra steps that will inform your goals, which will inform the draft of your MTW supplement. The collaboration to set goals, information gathered from stakeholders will inform your goals, which will inform also your draft. To select special waivers and activities, as you know, the goals that you set for your agency will guide which activities you undertake and ultimately which waivers you select. The impact analysis. As a reminder, the impact analysis will examine the intended and unintended impacts of changes as possible results of your MTW activities. The activities that you choose, the waivers that you select, and along with the results of the impact analysis will lead you to any necessary hardship policies that you will need to develop. The hardship policies, think about the negative impacts that the activities may have on some of the residents, either from the impact analysis results or carefully thinking about the activity itself. Ensure that you have policies to address how the agency will determine if the MTW activity constitutes a hardship. Be very clear about the agency and how the agency will provide immediate relief to those hardships. You will also then need to complete the MTW supplement form. Once you've finalized your MTW supplement content and including all supporting documents, then you are ready to complete the web-based supplement form. We're going to talk more about what it takes to complete the MTW supplement form later in the webinar. Crystal will cover that for us. She does a really good explanation. But for now, just know that the steps that we have talked about up until now, the public engagement, setting goals, waiver, the activity selection, the impact analysis, and the hardship policy will be folded into your MTW supplement. Let's see. To gain the approval, the most important part, right? Well, one of the most important parts in the process. The HUD field office will email you with comments, concerns, and maybe any corrections that need to be made to the supplement. And then it'll be returned for revision for you to address those concerns and corrections. We'll talk later about some best practices for developing the MTW supplement document that can be approved quickly, so it can be approved quickly. We'll also cover some tips for making revisions if you need to. And the first time around, you probably will. So return for revision doesn't mean a negative thing. It just means we're going to improve upon it. We'll cover some tips for making those revisions if you need to. Then we're going to address later how to update your ACOP and admin plan and the timing of that. You need to have your policies to be consistent with your new MTW activities and related waivers. You cannot implement MTW activities until the relevant sections of your ACOP and admin plan have been updated. We'll discuss further on how this fits into the process. Okay, now we're going to do a poll question to get a better sense of where you are and thinking about the pieces of the process you might be concerned about. Can we have the poll question, please? Okay, sorry, it was off to my right. Which of the steps in the MTW supplement process do you have concerns about? Select as many as that apply to you. Public engagement, collaborate to set goals, select waivers, impact analysis, hardship policies, how to complete the MTW supplement form, gaining HUD approval, update your plan or your policies, or anything other than that. And for those that said other, you know, if you want to come off mute at this time to describe your concerns, you can either enter them in the chat or come off mute. Or if you choose more than one of the options, we'd like you to elaborate on that as well. Okay. All right. I cannot see the answers to your questions. Does anybody want to come off mute?
Hi, Autumn, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Lindsay Reams in Grand Rapids.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, so I want to just share a concern for PHAs with fiscal year end 6/30.
Okay.
So this timing process has been very, very tight for us. So our plans have to be submitted to HUD by April 12th, because I think the 15th falls on a weekend. So that means in order to have all of our stuff done, our board approval happen in March, we had to have started this process like in November. And so a
Okay.
lot of the information is coming to us sort of after the fact. So let me just, and it's also very concerning that we've gone through this process, you know, and we update our policies only to turn around and have to do them again. So let me just tell you the approach we took, and you can tell me, no, we got to go back and redo this or not. But what we
Can I
did,
stop you right there? We're gonna, I don't, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're actually going to go over that more in depth. And I would love for you to share after I give you like my recommendations, and then you can say, yeah, we did that, or this is how we did it. So if you don't mind, we'll keep going, and then we'll talk about it when we get to that slide, because we know it is a concern of everybody's.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay, so public engagement. It's really important to establish the trust by notifying all your residents and participants of what the PHA is proposing to do under the MTW program. Remember that engaging effectively with stakeholders, your staff, your community, your residents is a huge part of the MTW process. Communicating well and building that trust, following through on the promises, essentially. A key component of your public engagement process is to involve your agency's public housing residents and your housing choice voucher families through your resident advisory board or your tenant association. If your agency doesn't have one of these, it's really important to establish one as quickly as possible. To get the RAB engagement is a very important part of the process. The RABs help us ensure that program participants have a very meaningful opportunity to participate in decisions that directly impact the programs that they are participating in. We want you to be able to educate your stakeholders by holding a minimum of 2 resident participant meetings. This is considered a best practice. So unlike the PHA plan where you just post and you hold a public comment or a public hearing and nobody shows up, we really want you to take a few extra steps to make sure everybody is getting heard. And Lindsay's going to explain from a PHA perspective how she did that and that it was very successful. These meetings must be held in addition and prior to holding your public hearing. The input from the public should ultimately inform all of your goals. Publish your notice of your public hearing and make PHA plan and the supplement available for review at the same time, just like you do with your PHA plan. Just make sure your supplement is also available. As you make the information available to the public, it's important to develop a draft MTW supplement. Use the OMB approved form, the HUD 50075, the MTW PDF version in your planning process. Don't try to use the online system as your planning tool. Don't try, be sure and review the form, talk to your residents, talk to your resident advisory board and other stakeholders, and develop your narrative and all your backup documentation before you go into the system. This will save you a lot of headache, I promise. The HUD form, the PDF version of the supplement, is your one-stop shop in gathering the information you need when you're ready to complete the system. Actually, when you go in line, you want to hold a 45-day public review process. You can do more, but 45 days definitely, which is prior to your public hearing. The PHA plan and the supplement attachments and supporting documents must be available for inspection and review for the public in your office, on your website, okay? And remember that you must market to a diverse population, just like you do your PHA plan. Remember that you must hold the public hearing to discuss the PHA plan and the supplement. Come prepared, have the draft. Also remember to keep track of all your comments. These comments must be submitted to the agency, and the agency's description on how you addressed and took those into consideration. So, a really good thing, a resource we have is getting your buy-in with the MTW online manual for gaining stakeholder buy-in. We highly recommend that you refer to that. So just a quick question in the chat. We're a little behind, so go ahead and enter it, but I'm going to go to the next slide. In getting your resident advisory board or tenant association feedback and input in the process, the RAB is key to get thoughtful input from your resident perspective. If there is any if you don't have a RAB, please get one. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, public and, oh, yep, let's go to that one. Okay, as we promised, here's an example of the timeline for each fiscal year and how to complete the supplement. And so we will talk about those 630s and how to incorporate your policies and procedures. You want to plan carefully and establish a schedule, just like you do with your PHA plan. You want to back into those dates. In most years, it's done concurrently with the annual PHA plan. Drafting the supplement and all the supporting documents and the required impact analysis and hardship policies, the 45-day public review process, the actual public hearing, developing all the content for the supplement, and then submission of your plan and your supplement by the due date. You can reference the chart above or on the screen to see the latest dates that you'll want to begin your preparation based on your fiscal year date. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, here, this is what I promised. So Lindsay, if you want to add after I go through this, please jump in. The timing of the admin plan and ACOP. So you want to combine the process of the annual plan process with your policies. Use one of the PHA plan templates, and here's the website. I'm sure you all know where to find those. The annual plan template should be submitted. There's a template for standard, troubled, small. The qualified PHAs want to use that small template. And you want to notice, or I want to call your attention to B1 of the new activities. the PHA intends to undertake any new activities. This is where you'll describe the activities. There's the MTW activities to be undertaken. You'll want to consider any policy updates to incorporate into the admin plan and the ACOP. The proposed changes, I recommend using a red line version, so you're calling out to the public and to the board what's being changed or what's being added. Include that link. Okay, this is the caveat, the nuance. We recommend that you include the language that states the proposed policy changes are pending the approval of the MTW PHA plan for the PHA plan. So you don't have to go back out for public comment to get them updated. Have them ready during the PHA plan and MTW supplement so that everybody can review them pending the approval of the activities. The PHA plan provides a copy to the board then. The 45-day notice for public comment is posted. They are part of that. If you're a small PHA and you're qualified, the regs say that you only have to give a 30-day notice, not a 45-day notice, but it does not hurt to give the public more time to read those. The small PHAs have to deliver directly in mail to the participants or post at least in 3 places. Then you obtain your board approval and implement pursuant to the effective date of the approved supplement and PHA plan. So Lindsay, is this in alignment with what you did, or do you have another best practice?
No. So that's exactly what I was going to ask, if that was okay that we did, because we outlined our changes specifically to MTW around those flexibilities in the supplement, like in a standout box in a different color font, exactly with that, with language that says that these are pending approval of the supplement and PHA plan. We also did, we sent direct emailing to some of our other community partners that we often deal with based on what's in those additional admin and ACOPs, and that was legal aid and fair housing.
Great.
But I also wanted to just make a comment on the previous slide, if you can,
okay,
because I want to make sure.
Go back. Yeah.
I think people are aware of this, but our board meets the 3rd Tuesday of each month. So we had to back up our time frame to be able to have our approvals done next week. So we couldn't, our public hearing was actually this past week. So that means we had to post it before mid-February. So I just want to make sure people are aware of that. You said that, right? That you've got to know what your dates are and back into it. But because of how our board meetings fall and our April board meeting being after the due date of our plans to HUD, we actually have to make all this happen at the March board meeting.
Okay. So how far apart is your PHA plan due, and when you'll have all the steps completed?
Everything will be completed next week when it goes to the board. Actually, it will be done by Friday because that's when they get their board packages. The only thing that will still be remaining is the sign off by the city on the certification of consistency for the agency.
Yeah, so you can submit the supplement later than your PHA plan. We are asking the field offices to, at their discretion, tell us when the 75 days start. So please work with your field office on when that time starts.
When you say 75 days, you mean when we have to submit?
Oh, no, yeah, there's 275 days. So
Okay.
You guys have to do it 75 days before the fiscal year, and we have to review it and approve it within 75 days. So say you submit your PHA plan on one day and you submit your supplement in the system another day, the field office has the discretion to say, you know, we have 75 days from the last submission of the supplement in the system. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but for us, it won't. It doesn't make sense. We're going to submit them at the same time.
Okay, okay. So what's your main concern?
No, my main concern, because in previous webinars, there was some discussion about having to, so you couldn't make the revisions to your ACOP until after you got your approval back. And so I think you clarified it today. There's a difference between making the changes and acknowledging that they're not effective until approval versus waiting till you get the approval and then going back to your plans and making the changes. It just was going to be very administratively burdensome for us to do that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so you've answered the questions and addressed our concerns. Thank you.
So specific to your question, that's why we addressed it today for everybody. So thank you for bringing that concern to us.
Hi, this is Mitzi Rowe from Bristol. We went through the process of posting our notices, have our RAB meetings. We are June 30th Housing Authority. And it wasn't until today that we get to find out that we have to have at least 2 resident meetings. We had RAB meetings, we have a public hearing, allow for comments. We hire a consultant to help us with the waivers and the plan because we were ready to submit our plan, but now we're getting to find out that we have to have at least another resident meeting. And we were getting ready to get the board to approve next week our agency plan and our supplement. So are you saying that all we have to do is get the plan approved, the agency plan, and then work on the supplement, get the pending items resolved, and then just notify to HUD we submitted at this time, and they will give us 75 days from that point?
If you don't mind, can we address that specifically with your desk officer and your field office? So that I just don't want, I don't know if I can answer your questions sufficiently in the time that we have, but we want to work through that with you. That's why it's so important, you guys, to read the ops notice and the requirements of the public engagement. Misty, are you okay with that?
Well, I attended a session, a moving to work session the last time, and we were told that we could submit, but the vendor that we hired said, no, you need to have a separate public hearing for your moving to work plan and a separate hearing for your waivers. So
Okay,
I'm a
did
little
you-
confused with the information I'm receiving.
There's two meetings if you have safe harbor waivers. Did you have safe harbor waivers?
No, we're planning to choose those that do not require impact analysis or any kind of reports.
Okay.
And then later on, then we, once we better prepare, we will choose the other waivers that we were looking for because we were told to take it easy, not to try to get everything all at once.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't look like we will be timely with the submission of the supplement because of the additional meetings. So can you just tell me, are we required to have a public hearing just for the plan, or can we have a public hearing
Good question.
about the agency plan and the supplement and the waivers, which is what we did?
You can have it on the same day. You can have one right after each other. You can incorporate both topics. Whatever's, we're not saying that you have to have, like another meeting on another day.
Okay. Okay, that was something that I didn't have clear.
As
Thank
long
you.
as both issues are covered.
Yes, we covered the
Okay.
waivers, the agency plan each, and the supplement plan in the
Okay.
public hearing. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if you have any questions, let's get in contact with your field office and with your desk officer, okay?
Very well.
I want to make sure your questions are answered.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the takeaways. The MTW supplement could take up to 6 months. It's concurrent with the annual plan. Remember, they're married and tied together. To submit an MTW supplement while an annual PHA plan is pending approval, like I said before, just make sure to be in communication with your field office to avoid any confusion about this, okay? Now, I am so excited to hand this off to Lindsay from the Akron Housing Authority, who has been very successful in her real life experience. So Lindsay, please take over.
Thank you so much, Autumn. Thank you all for having me here today. We can share the experience with you from Akron, Ohio. You go to my next slide, please. So there's a quick overview of our PHA if you're interested. We had joined MTW in September 2021 as part of Cohort 2, the stepped and tiered rent demonstration. So we have submitted 2 supplements so far, getting ready to start on our 3rd supplement later this spring. Next slide, please. So I divided my quick comments for you today, one being prior to public process. And I know it sounds like a lot of you are already in the middle of it or at the end of it, but even things to think about for next year, and then some comments on during public process as well. My first comment is reaching out, thinking about who might this impact, who might have thoughts on our waivers, on our ideas, and finding a way to include them. That might be just a phone call to discuss it with them. It might be forming a committee. It could be doing a survey, any way to get additional feedback. I know Autumn mentioned how important resident advisory boards are. We do have one here in Akron. That is great, letting us pop in, express some ideas that we have and give us feedback. They're really open about that. One drawback for us is that most of our RAB are senior public housing residents. So we have had to branch out to make sure we're getting opinions from housing choice voucher participants and family public housing households. One way that we've done that so far is through surveys. So we did a big Survey Monkey last January, actually before our first supplement. And we sent it out to every household that we had an email address for, which was in the thousands. And we got about 360 surveys back. So percentage-wise, maybe not fabulous, but it just had tons of information for us. So we asked multiple choice questions about things we were considering waivers on. We asked open-ended questions, just get their general feedback and maybe inform some future ideas for waivers. Things like how to improve the public housing program. Why are landlords not taking your Section 8 voucher? What landlord incentives might encourage new landlords to join our program? To hear from them as well. We also did a survey for staff to make sure we heard all the staff voices that wanted to be heard on how to streamline, how to make their administrative burden lighter, what might help the process for their clients, and getting their feedback as well. We formed an MTW staff committee that are our supervisors who are involved in the waivers so that they can give an opinion on the waivers, give us feedback on them in real time as we implement, and then think of ideas for future supplements. We've also attended a lot of staff meetings to make sure that we're not hearing just from managerial staff, but also from our frontline staff on their thoughts of problem points and what can we do to fix that with the waiver, or what their views are on the waivers that we have suggested so far. And then my favorite that we've done so far is forming an MTW advisory committee. And so we started this as soon as we joined MTW. And our advisory committee has 3 PHA staff members. It has a public housing senior resident and a family resident. It has a voucher family household and a voucher senior household. We have an HCV landlord on there, Job and Family Services, which administers our food stamp program and childcare programs here. Our local public school system is on that, a behavioral health center we work with, fair housing, And we meet with them to go over the waivers, explain the tiered rent demonstration that we're a part of, get their feedback. And the best part about that particular committee is that it started out just us explaining waivers and their feedback, but it's really become more of a brainstorming session. So they have brought a lot of ideas to us and questions for us to grow even outside of MTW. So they asked us before, why don't we have an app? Why aren't we sending call reminders for households like the doctor's office does? So we actually are developing an app right now for the Housing Authority, and we did get a call reminder system to send texts, emails, voicemails for appointments, inspections, paperwork due, etc. And all of that came fully from the advisory committee who had that idea to share with us. Next slide, please. Timing for a public process, it's never too early or too late. So you have that official public process time that Autumn talked about, but it's really a year-long, every year process. So we have our staff committee meets monthly. Our advisory committee was monthly early on in our MTW process, and now we're at quarterly. As we kind of have fewer waivers and changes going on. And then we do keep records for future waiver ideas. So every meeting that we have, every survey that we send out, we've really recorded those waiver requests or ideas so that each year as we go back to form our new supplement, we can see what can be added in this year and kind of layered on. And I think Mitzi mentioned not doing everything at once, and that's so true. So we're keeping all those ideas for the future to continue to come back to. My general advice is about education, communication, and presentation. Make sure these public meetings or other ways that you reach out, that you're explaining what MTW is and why this is great for your agency, why you're thinking of these waivers and what the goals are behind them. So really showing that transparency to the public and our residents. Make sure there are ways to receive feedback. That might be if someone does attend a meeting, they're able to comment then, but also other ways to do that. So if we can offer the information and receive feedback in multiple methods, we can reach more people. So we've done virtual meetings and in-person meetings. We've posted recordings of our meetings on the website. People can, of course, comment in person or in writing. We also created an MTW email line or email account and call-in line, so people can call or send an email anytime, day or night, and ask us a question. And then we have time to actually answer that and get a good response to them about our waivers, about anything MTW related. Next slide, please. So for during your public process time, a few quick suggestions here from our experience. Find new ways to notify your participants and your stakeholders. I know Autumn mentioned we're all used to annual plan meetings and maybe one person shows up and that's it. MTW meetings, it's so important to have people attending. So can you send maybe a postcard to all your households? Can you stick a little flyer in a new HAP contract, in an inspection letter, in a rent statement to get your households, get your landlords involved and let your community know what's happening outside of the required public notice. Also offering multiple options, like I mentioned before, virtual or in-person, maybe at different sites that you have available to make it more accessible. And then Autumn actually hit my next point about how you can have your hearings immediately following each other. And that's just a great tip that we got from a previous webinar as well. If people are in the room to hear what you have to say and give their opinion, give them everything, right? Get all the feedback you can possibly get at one time. If you're able to have the right staff there at those meetings to answer questions, I think it really builds trust in that relationship. If people have questions about MTW, your waivers, or about other things, if someone can give them an answer quickly or get back to them soon after, it makes people feel valued and that it's worth coming to that meeting and listening to what you have to say. And then my last tip here is to create a timeline to keep track of all the dates that are happening. So Autumn did a nice chart that's a good overview of times, but for us, we have a very detailed Excel spreadsheet that goes date by date when waiver suggestions are due to me, because I'm the MTW coordinator, when I need to schedule meetings, put the notice in the paper, have something posted on the website, fill out the supplement form, submit it to HUD, all the extra dates, including internal items in one place, has been extremely helpful for us in tracking. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways of that quick overview are to ask multiple groups in multiple ways, keep the conversation going throughout the year, and allow for ways of back and forth communication so that everyone sees that you are taking into account what they have to say and possibly modifying your plans based on that. And the next question is, or the next slide is for questions. I think we have maybe a minute or two, Janet, for a question if anybody has any for me.
Definitely. Let's take one or two now, and don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat and or to email Lindsay afterwards. But anybody have something you'd like to ask right now? Sounds like you hit all of people's top questions about this, Lindsay. So I will say thank you. If you can hang on and see if there are any questions in the chat you want to respond to. And I believe you are open to getting emails?
Yes, my email's on the slide, so feel free to send me an email later if you think of something.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us here. And she'll stick around for a bit. I think Lindsay has to leave before the end of the webinar, but she's around for a little bit yet. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right, with that, let me turn it over to Crystal for the next section.
All right, rocking and rolling here along. Thank you, Janet, Lindsay, that was awesome. Autumn, you did a great job as well. You know, Lindsay, I thought it was great that you guys incorporate surveys, and even Melanie in the chat here, she said, Lindsay, could you share your surveys with us? So I guess I'm not the only one that thought that was fantastic. But so I see a lot of questions in chat earlier asking about selecting the waivers. And so let's dive in, okay? I think you've seen the flow chart, seen the process. It seems like a lot of you have already gotten started. I hope that you are familiar and know that you have to visit your MTW operations notice. There's a official version, a Federal Register version here on the screen, the link. There's also a reader-friendly PDF version. You're going to want to reference the MTW operations notice and your asset building cohort selection notice when you're looking to find those waivers, thinking backwards about how your agency is going to be able to meet the goals that you all have in mind, and then work backwards. So search for those waivers there. Also, there is an amazing training that allows you to look through all of the waivers and gives expands on the definitions and descriptions on the HUD Exchange online manual. So please, please visit there. And as you're doing that, whether you're in the MTW operations notice, whether you're in the selection notice, whether you're on the HUD Exchange online training tool, please always take good note of those required safe harbors, okay? So you have to look at the safe harbors. And then also, in addition to the MTW waivers, are our safe harbor and agency specific waivers, okay? And those can be found within, well, the safe harbor waivers are waivers that fall outside of the safe harbor parameters. And the agency specific waivers are waivers that are not within the MTW operations notice. Those are waivers that you guys would think of that would be specific to help your local community to come up with local, creative, innovative solutions. Shout out to the new logo. Next slide. No, actually, yeah, so. Perfect. All right. So we wanted to make sure that we were intentional here about addressing some things with ways to strengthen and advance and give you guys tips to strengthen your MTW supplement submissions. We've had a lot of these to come in so far, and I don't like to use like weakness as a word, but there are just things that could have been better fleshed out. So right here, we're going to just want to identify some things, some before, some afters. But what you're going to want to get through your point through your MTW supplement to convey your plans clearly to the public, and you want it to, be approved on the first go around, right? When you submit it to HUD. So we're going to give you some tips about how to make that happen. Again, like these are based on some of the weaknesses, if you will. We have seen the MTW supplement submitted by earlier cohorts thus far. So we start here, like your narrative, it should just clearly explain the basics, right? Therefore, within your description to HUD, you want to be able to clearly identify what you plan to do. Why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? And what makes you think it's a good idea, right? That will help your PHA to conquer your goals. So in the left column labeled before, it shows you some of the most common errors we see. And beside it to the right, we listed as what PHAs have done to strengthen their narratives within the MTW supplement. So let's take a look at what we have here first. Your narrative should include measurable goals. This will show us that you've established a baseline. And this is the first year, this is the time to establish a baseline. And you create a measurable baseline with data you have access to so that you can reevaluate its impact each and every year after, and whether that impact be negative or positive. And so also explicitly identify your MTW objectives and why that MTW activity helps you reach your overarching goal. A lot of the initial submissions included assertions without substantiations. Like, for example, if you select an MTW waiver that requires an impact analysis as a safe harbor, and your response is that there's no impact. Well, that's not to say that's not true, but this statement should be backed up with logical analysis explaining how you came to such conclusions. And lastly here, please provide clear acknowledgement of the need for addressing requirements such as safe harbors, impact analysis, hardship policies, etc. Please note also that as a best practice, the safe harbor parameters should be included as a part of your narrative even. It lets us know that you've really fleshed this out. You thought about how you were going to stay within the guidelines, and with the understanding that it goes deeper still than when determining eligibility versus feasibility in implementing your MTW activity. But we didn't know that you looked at the MTW operations notice. Next slide. Okay, so within this presentation, we have 3 different before and after examples. And in the interest of time, okay, I think so what we'll cover are the key topics and try to still grant enough time to answer your questions. I'm going to show you 2 of the 3 examples of the kinds of things we see in submissions that have to be reworked sometimes. The examples should hopefully help you to illustrate the kind of write-up that will convey your MTW plans clearly to the public and get HUD approvals across the finish line without a ton of back and forth revisions. So all 3 of these examples will concern the well-renowned and highly regarded PHA called the Anytown Housing Authority, or otherwise known as AHA. So AHA is looking to implement an Appendix 1 MTW waiver concerning alternative reexaminations. So they plan to move from annual to triennial reexams, which do that now, right? AHA's narrative should describe the MTW activity, the MTW agency's goal for the MTW activity, and if applicable, how the MTW activity contributes to a larger initiative. So the before text that you see here, it is accurate, but it is such a high level that it doesn't really explain what will be going on or why it will have the results stated. So next slide. All right, but so let me be clear, do a caveat here, right? These after examples, they are designed to give you the gist of what is needed in a submission, okay? We're not suggesting that any of these after examples are 100% complete or suggesting that you all should use them in your own submissions, but hopefully it will help. So in this after version here, we'll point out areas shaded in different colors that help me to explain to you my points. But the different colors that improve upon the before example that you saw in the last slide. So AHA has explained now why the family will be incentivized there in the green text, right? As they will get to keep 100% of their additional earnings, right? They include the statutory objective is being met in blue. And in pink, it says they explain what their logic is for thinking there will be cost savings. It really just fleshes out. It's very, very clear. And when you submit online, you won't be able to color code, but I just wanted to I thought this was a really good point because again, we do see like the what you want to do, but then like how you got to that and the effect and impact. So that's a better example for that slide for the after. And let's see, talking about impacts, let's go to the next slide. Are we on the next slide? Sorry. Okay, perfect. All right, so once you have selected your waivers and activities, it's time to move on to conducting any of the required impact analysis. Don't just determine if it's the right activity for you to select, right? So remember a few things. You should complete your draft impact analysis ideally before you post and you go out for public comment, right? You will also revise your impact analysis based on public comments potentially, and ultimately submit your final versions of all as a part of your MTW supplement. So why is that important? Well, the impact analysis help your agencies to assess how effective an activity is or will be, and helps to clearly identify any unintended consequences or hardships that are likely to affect, those assisted households, right? So get a clear picture of those possible consequences will let you revise your activities, especially if there's any negative or adverse effects. It also may affect how you add in the content within your hardship policies if there are any negative impacts. And also, you just want to be sure that you are able, with your impact analysis, to clearly explain to your stakeholders, to your staff, to your HUD, that the PHA has considered all of the possible negative implications and positive implications, and explain how those possible impacts are addressed. Next slide. Okay, great. So another example. All right, another before here for the impact analysis. So AHA again, and this is actually an area where we have often seen some gaps in the supplement submission from some of the earlier cohorts. So we just want to try to help you to get through this and be as effective as possible. Here again, the before language, is it logical on the surface? Or AHA sees that staff will need only 1/3 the time processing since re-exams will be triennial and anticipates no impact on households. That is not that detailed. So how do we flesh this out more, get more descriptive? Onto the next slide for how to improve upon it, the after. All right, so in order for the public, like I said, to really understand the impact of the activity, and for HUD to see that AHA has really thought this activity through, the write-up just needs to be more detailed and in-depth. So in this after version, what you see is more of the logic behind its conclusion. So HUD and the public can follow the thought process together. So in this write-up, their reason for the anticipated savings here is in green. It says clearly, decreased staff times, verifying income, assets, to give examples, it's perfect, it's better. And also here, you see in blue, the nuance analysis of impacts is explained. It says staff time won't be fully reduced to 1/3 of its formal level because there will be hardships, exemptions to process, and there will be changes in family contribution benefiting families with increased incomes, but also increasing AHA's costs. And finally, there are quantifiable measures and estimates of anticipated savings and costs, not just a general assertion. You see there in pink that gives, the dollar amount of $20,000 annually due to delayed rent increases. So it really goes more in depth. It's a good example for the impact analysis for the after. Next slide is also, this slide provides you with another example of a best practice and how you can format your impact analysis by calling out each of the required 9 factors. All of the required 9 factors are in Appendix 2 of the MTW Operations Notice, and provide you with more examples on how to write a more in-depth description here. So I won't go into great detail again on this slide, you get the point, but please, by all means, revisit the slideshow. We've placed this here, a lot of other good examples and a lot of good resources. And I want to skip past this so I can give you a good example of and talk about the hardship policies and developing the hardship policies. So the next step in preparing your supplement, right, is going to be to develop a hardship policy. You may see within those safe harbors down there that it's a hardship policy, impact analysis required. And when you see hardship policies, then you know that you have to make sure that you complete that, have that in place. And a big area where we see PHAs could strengthen their supplement submission is with the hardship policies as well. I will say, like, remember that you don't have to have separate policies for every activity, okay? But the policies that you do have must be tailored to address the suite of activities you will be undertaking. So within the supplement on the web-based form, it will ask you specifically, does this hardship policy apply to more than one MTW activity? And you may select a number of them within this suite of activities, but you just want to make sure that whatever you're uploading, whatever you're providing, that supporting documentation is tailored to address all of them across the board. And also, you're going to want to ensure that the policies really speak to addressing the needs of the households also that could potentially run into any hardships as a result of your activities. So if you're looking for a sample of a hardship policy, an example, there is one available on the online manual telling you it's amazing. But yeah, so if you want to click on that link that's on the slide, then there's actually an example, a sample of a real live hardship policy if you were looking for something to look at and reference. Also, you must complete the draft hardship policy, just like the impact analysis, before you go out for the public comment, posting your public hearing. And the idea behind that is because, you've already fleshed these out. You thought about what the impact is, and you prepared on how you would successfully do it. So the public needs to see all of that process. And so, well, because you really also just want to make sure that you're taking into consideration that everything in the beginning that you do, the work you do now, the documentation, it'll make for a more quick submission when you're ready to move forward. And let's see. All right, next slide. All right. This is a before for the hardship policy. I'm going to do it anyway. So we will follow our existing policy of all families to ask for a hardship rep. Well, that's not very descriptive, is it, AHA? So we're going to see how can AHA do a much better job at this on the next slide. What's the after look like? Okay, so perfect. I would say, again, it starts with the specifics about when the policy would be triggered there in green, right? If the family experiences a decrease in income, a change of circumstance, or an increase in expenses, that would make it difficult, right? We've identified then where the hardships would occur. Provide specifics about what the remedy will be to those hardships in blue. The hardship rent will be provided for up to 12 months. So, it's qualitative. And it goes one step further to foresee additional complications that might arise and how they will be handled there in pink. So if the hardship persists, the family can request one or more renewals and up until their next triennial re-exam. So this is just a snippet. I hope it was helpful. It just gives you an example. And I believe that by showing you this, hopefully at least, it will help to encourage you to really go more in depth in how you're thinking about how you're going to write your narratives and descriptions for all your required documents, your narratives for your activities. And then also it will probably likely cut out potentially in the future on some back and forth questions between you and HUD when it's time for review. So we'll say there. Janet, questions?
Great, thank you, Crystal. Fantastic. I think we're hearing right there the voice of experience, the MTW staff who've looked at a lot of these supplements as they've come in from prior cohorts very much want to help you get to a stronger draft in the first instance. So that's what those examples are intended to do. As you think about writing your supplement and trying to put in the strongest submission you can, any questions you might have for Crystal and Allison about how you're going to do that? And I've been seeing there are a number of questions coming into the chat. I think a lot of them have been answered, but let's just go to the one that just came in. Is there a way to find out which housing authorities are doing each option in the cohort so we can bounce questions from each other? We are doing the credit building option. Crystal, I know you guys know, is there a way we can share that information with people?
Oh, where's Alice and where you need her? Okay, so I know that we are encouraging everyone to communicate with each other. I want to put a pin in the question, but respond to you directly. And if others are interested as well, we encourage you to speak with one another. I will say that on our website, on the MTW webpage, for all of the MTW supplements that have already been previously approved, we post all of those. If you know any of the initial agencies, there were the MTW plans. They're all the MTW plans and the MTW supplements, which are what the MTW expansion agencies submit. And they're all on the webpage. You can view what agencies have previously done. I don't know if there is a friendly version of that where you can do a drop down, but please allow me to ask that question back to our team, and then we can get back to you. Okay, that sounds good. It's a great idea, though. Great idea. Please absolutely communicate.
Yeah, it's part of what we're hoping will happen in the communities of practice too, as we're going forward, that you can bounce ideas off each other. Mitzi, I see you've got a hand up. You want to come off mute?
Yes, I would like to know if you have a supplement plan, but you're still working on your waivers, can you submit the plan and explain that you're working on them, on the waivers, and then come back later when you have all the waivers that you selected, resolved, and
Okay,
submit again?
Mitzi, thank you for the question. Though ideally, you need to wait until submission when you've already fleshed everything out, when you know which waivers that you're seeking to implement, when you've taken those waivers to your board, to your staff, through the public process. And then, when you have all of the required supporting documentation per the MTW operations notice, that's when you would want to actually submit in your waiver request. And I will be talking more about like the form in online submission, so that may provide also a bit of more context as to why you would want to wait. But I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Crystal. Thanks for the question, Mitzi. Lindsay Reams, I see your hand.
Just real quick. So the asset building cohort doesn't have some of the same direct correlations with the activities related to the waivers as some of the other cohorts do. So in the conversation with the researchers and a couple of the past webinars, there's been a lot of discussion about making sure you're describing your activities as they may have changed since application submission. But if it doesn't, so for example, with the savings accounts, where we talk about how many families, and is that the type of stuff we should put in the very beginning narrative so that you understand the final activity or program, the things that we're going to do, how many families, what dollar amounts, period of time, that sort of stuff? Because I didn't really see a place in the form to do that.
No, that's a good point, because there's not a specific field in the form that says, please put your cohort specific waiver here, information. So first and foremost, always speak with the evaluators and PDNRs if you have any clarifying, things that you need to make sure that this is what will get us across the finish line. But when you have done that and it is time to submit, you're going to actually submit your cohort specific waiver information within the form and within the specific area that I'm going to go over with the next section. But essentially it's the same place as an upload within the form. So it doesn't call it out, but you're in the right place. And that's a very, very good question.
Great. Thanks for the question, Lindsay. I am seeing in the chat some continued information about interest in connecting with each other. And I know that Crystal's going to take this back to the team and try to find a way to get information to you all. So we can look at whether there's a possibility to get an email list of everyone in the cohort or something like that, to your suggestion, Melanie. I'm also seeing that Sandra just put in the chat that they would like to connect with other people who are in option 3. Totally feel free to put yourself in the chat. If you're option 3 and would like to be connecting, put yourself in there. That will let you know immediately who's interested in this. pending getting some kind of a listing from HUD if we can get that out to you. So use the chat to get yourselves together for sure. Any other questions before we go to a couple of minutes of break? I know Eva's been doing an amazing job of trying to keep up with the questions in the chat. So if you have any questions about anything that you got there that didn't get completely answered, you can feel free to bring that up. And I see we're all getting ready to connect with each other here in the chat. That's great.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, go ahead and keep putting your connection interests into the chat so you can find each other. If you have additional questions that you want to frame up, go ahead and put those in, and we'll try to get to those after the break. But for right now, let's just take a 10-minute pause. I've got, let's see, East Coast time 3:43, so let's make it 3:53. We'll come back. So thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you in 10. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Hope you all had a chance to absorb a little bit of that information that came at you over the last hour. A lot of good stuff coming from both Autumn and Crystal, so I hope you were able to digest a little bit. As we get back in and start our second part of the webinar here, I'd like to move us into a quick poll to give us a sense of where people are in terms of their supplement process. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen in the polling area, click the little polling bubble at the bottom if you don't see it. You should see a question that asks, what parts of the MTW supplement process has your agency completed? And this is one where you can select as many as apply. I know that we've got people at a lot of different stages, so I think getting a sense of how far along people are will really help with the second half of the webinar. So go ahead and indicate you hosted stakeholder meetings, you've developed your goals, you selected your activities and waivers, you've drafted your supplement, impact analysis and hardship policies and made those available to the public. You've actually held the public hearing. You've revised based on what you gathered in terms of information, and you've actually begun completing the form online. I'll give you just one more second to click all that apply. And with that, Sean, why don't you go ahead and close the poll? Great. So it looks like we've got, of those who replied, not much going on yet in actually beginning to complete the supplement online. Got a couple of folks who are at those final steps. A number of folks who've actually started with the stakeholder meetings, developing goals, selecting activities, and doing your drafting. So with that, Crystal, that gives you a sense of where people are. I will turn it back over to you to continue.
Thank you. Perfect. Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone enjoyed much needed break. A lot of information. So let's keep it going. Let's dive into another exciting part and discuss how to finally submit your MTW supplement into HUD. So, which you will do through an online form. Okay. So when you do get ready to submit, it will be easiest for you to navigate through the form if you have all of your content at the ready and can enter it as you go. So to prepare for this, you're going to want to probably use the PDF of the HUD 5075 MTW OMB approved form to guide you. Okay, so that's the MTW supplement PDF version of the form. And there's a direct link on this slide, but you can also find it on HUD.gov or on the MTW supplement webpage. And on the screen, we've also included a snippet from the PDF. Okay, so like you see here on the screen, the PDF shows you each question and you can see what the answer fields will look like. use this PDF to figure out what information you'll need in advance and in what format you're going to want to submit it. But a few technical notes, okay? When preparing for what you want to put in your online submission, you can also use a Microsoft Word, but minimize formatting by not using a ton of numbering and bulleting when you're doing that. I love bulleting out information, but the reason why you would not want to do that is because theoretically you're typing the stuff up. So when you get ready to submit, you can copy and paste your narratives directly into the form. But on the form, formatting other than bullets will not show up because the fields are plain text. So that's just a good note. So write that down. And I also think of the Word file as an internal working document, since only its content will appear in the system, okay? Also note that the MTW supplement does have character limits in each field. So you can find information about this along with some more technical tidbits within the how to use the system job aid. And a very best practice is for you to use the supplement PDF to guide your preparation. And only, I'd wait to log into the system to when you're ready to complete the MTW supplement, when you have all of your narratives separate, ready to copy and paste into the document. We have seen PHAs that submit their supplement form online a bit prematurely, and that has the potential to cause some disconnect between you and HUD due to version control. And also, it's another one of those tips that will help you to cut on any unnecessary back and forth from when you are ready to finally submit the form. Okay, next slide. Okay, so flowcharts, love flowcharts. So as you're preparing to submit your supplement, we recommend that you follow this flowchart as a guide, okay? Prior to beginning to complete your supplement online, walk through the PDF version of the form, of the MTW supplement form, to figure out exactly what you're going to need. You're going to also want to go to the MTW operations notice, okay, to figure out what you're going to want to need. If you're doing MTW activities, make sure you look at the description and check out those safe harbors to see if you need any additional, impact analysis or hardship policy, or stepped in or rent schedule or table that needs to be updated, or anything like that. You have to go and look at the MTW operations notice and also your selection notice to determine what your requirements are and what you're going to want to submit. Okay, you want to do that before you get started. Also, work with your colleagues to gather that information. Write up your narratives and other responses in Word, and like I said, limit the formatting as much as possible, and gather all of those supporting documentation as you're preparing your text. Save it all in the same place is also a good practice. And let's talk about some of those supporting documents on the next slide, please. Okay, so we actually talked about most of these attachments that you'll need, that will need to be included already. The impact analysis and hardship policies for sure, right? But if you are submitting either a safe harbor or an agency specific waiver request, they will be submitted as attachments to within the form, okay? Submitted as attachments. And if and when you are requesting, I think somebody asked about this earlier, if and when you're requesting to implement a cohort specific waiver request, you'll need to upload the request as an attachment within the web-based form. And important to just jot this down in your notes with this one. There isn't currently a section online in the web-based form that prompts you to upload your cohort specific waiver form or their supporting documents, okay? But what you would do is you'll upload your cohort specific waiver request under the agency specific waiver upload section. So there's an agency specific waiver field, and you'll just go ahead and you'll upload all of those documents. Everyone at HUD understands that they'll be on the lookout. I would say, like, we know that has to be the case, but also I am hopeful that in the future, as we continue to make updates to the form online, then that would be definitely one of the updates, because we want to be able to track that throughout the years and hopefully be able to pull reports from it. So during the engagement process, you will develop 2 documents that will need to be uploaded as well. So the document that lists the public comments received, right? And then a separate document analyzing the comments and describing the decisions, what you received back, the feedback received back from your public, and how your agency made any changes in response to those comments. How did it influence it, if and how it influenced it? And finally, there is the MTW certifications of compliance that needs to be signed. You know, you need to scan it and upload it in the online form. And please make sure that this is a recently signed version of the certification form. That's another thing that we've found, like we'll see something and it's dated in 2020, well, early 2022. And, you know, that would not be the most recent version. We want to make sure that your board is signing off on what is most recently being requested to submit, and what you guys are going to be implementing. So another area where lots of agencies have missed is in the naming conventions for the files, which how would you know what to name it? But we specify within the job aid that it's best to name, use the naming convention that you see here on the form. And this is another good thing I would say to do as far as the cohort specific waivers. So what you'll do is you'll put in your PHA code, then the fiscal year, and then a short descriptive name for the item. So on the slide, we have, you know, for written hardship policy, impact analysis. And so in kind for the cohort specific waivers, please by all means label it as such, okay? And if you are supporting multiple impact analysis or multiple hardship policies, please include these also, but identify information in the short name to make that clear as well, okay? Note that this is the first naming convention bullet, and it's not just hardship, but specifically written hardship. That's also going to be good to be as detailed as possible. Thanks. Right on it. Vibing. Okay. All right. So another thing to be on the lookout for that many users have missed is instructions, right? There are actually instructions at the end of the PDF version of this form. I have it printed out. I keep it highlighted, worked up. But at the end of the HUD 5075 PDF form, there are actually instructions. And these instructions don't contain everything that you're going to need to know about the form, but they do contain very important items such as the file naming convention and what other information should be entered, like in section F, okay, which is the public housing operating subsidy grant reporting section. So when you're looking for some additional clarity on what type of responses to provide, I'd check here. I'd print out your PDF, or you can print out the instructions only, or you could bookmark this, but definitely double check the instructions section. And take a look at the bottom left link on this slide. You'll find where we've also created a reference guide to help explain in a nutshell what you need to do in each section of the form. So a sneak peek into the reference guide is located right here on the screen. There's a snippet on the right, and it includes a sample question that would be asked regarding the narrative, the text that you see in the arrow with the green arrows, explaining what to do in the text input fields. So it says, describe how to seek to address three statutory objectives. Recommend you draft in a Word document. So it gives some really good tidbits and supports when you're trying to go in and prepare to submit your supplement. So you can use this document also to get the lay of the land as you get it ready. And I do have time for a quick question. I'm gonna see if I got it. Another quick question. Why not? All right, so should you use the HUD 5075 MTW OMB approved form or the online MTW supplement form to build your MTW supplement responses and ensure that you have gathered all of your supporting documentation? So should you use the PDF or should you go online to start filling out everything? Okay. All right, very good. PDF. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right, that's right. Use the OMB approved form to continue to guide for your planning, okay? All right, next slide. All right, more tips. All right, first, regarding getting online access. All right. Technically, the executive director, the EDs can request access to the system once the MTW ACC amendment has been submitted to HUD, signed, countersigned, fully executed, then you may request access. However, depending on how far along you are in preparing for your actual submittal, it may be best to wait until all of your MTW supplement text is drafted and all supporting documents have been prepared. It's up to you. But please remember that the online form is not as suitable as for a planning tool. It's really meant only as like a place to input the work that you do offline to develop the MTW supplement, okay? And the system will save a draft once you do initiate and begin submitting. It will save a draft for you on the online system. So you can return to it once you've entered information. And if you just want to be mindful, because once you do go in there, which is why we sometimes kind of encourage you to steer away and wait until you're ready, it's because each time if you were to start a new submission, then you're just gonna prompt a new form, and that sometimes affects version control. So I wanted to just point that out, like just make sure that if you can request, and when you request, also think about the number of people who you're requesting has access to the form. You're going to want to think about this from the perspective of who's going to actively be using the form, okay, and who should be designated as a user. A good reason to limit this sometimes could be because passwords expire after 60 days and accounts could actually be made inactive after 90 days. So requesting access for users just in case is kind of discouraged, but be encouraged to communicate with us, to HUD, what your needs are based on who will be actively working on the system, for sure. And so for the EDs, for the executive directors, to grant access, you are ready to hit the buttons. And what you're going to do is follow the instructions as outlined on the Housing Information Portal, HIP, getting hip with HIP, Housing Information Portal, MTW Supplement Module Job Aid for PHA users. And the link is there, right there for you on the slide. So when you're ready, you're going to be able to access it through here prior to requesting user access, since there are other items that need to be provided when you send the request and send these details. They sometimes change over time. So just be sure to always check the job aid as well. Next slide. Okay, another helpful tip. So this is another field where sometimes people also can get tripped up on when filling out the online form, because it relates to, I need my glasses. Why do I have my glasses on? It relates to the MTW supplement for PHA fiscal year beginnings. So this is interesting. The system pre-populates the month and the day of your fiscal year beginning. So the only thing you will need to do is to select your fiscal year, but just be mindful of selecting the correct fiscal year. That may sound odd, but we do see a ton of them come in and it's like, we're doing it for 23 or 22, and it's not actually accurate. So just be mindful of that you're selecting the correct fiscal year beginning. And if you have a question about it, you're selecting the fiscal year that your agency intends to begin implementing your MTW activities, okay? And it could also be thought of as the beginning of your fiscal year. But for example, if you need an example, like if your fiscal year 2023 started October 1st, 2022, then you would have selected 2022 for the year for supplement fiscal year beginning field, okay? And in the PDF, you will be able to see that generates in the system. Once you have input your data, it auto-populates, and you will see the fiscal year beginning and the year fields combined, okay? So next slide. All right, getting HUD approval. So you've got all of your information together, you're feeling really good about everything. You submitting your PHA plan, and at the same time, you're submitting in your MTW supplement to the PHA plan, and you're ready, to move forward. I'm gonna give you some batch of tips here to focus on the approval process after you've submitted, okay? So no use of waivers until the MTW supplement is approved. That's something first and foremost we want to say. You've submitted, but you don't have permission to implement any of the waivers until you receive an official HUD approved signed letter stating to that effect. As we noted, the approval may come in several parts, either through a conditional or final approval waiver being issued. And you'd likely receive a conditional approval in an instance where you had an agency-specific waiver that was still pending decision, but that all of your PHA plans and along with your MTW supplement waivers and activities were deemed eligible to be approved by HUD. So we went ahead and issued a conditional approval so you get started on implementing your MTW waivers on time. MTW waivers are likely to be approved relatively quickly as long as the correct documentation has been provided and the safe harbors are observed. But agency-specific waivers and safe harbor waivers are likely to take more time. They go through a much more in-depth detailed process of review from our office at MTW. We also speak with whatever applicable or associate other HUD program offices. It probably would get input from the Office of General Counsel, OGC, and ultimately it goes for an official approval or disapproval from right now the General Deputy Assistant Secretary, Dominique Blum. So it is a process, and we will do everything that we can to continue to review and process them as quickly as possible, but it does take a longer amount of time to process. So depending on what your goals are, if you can meet any of those goals within the MTW waivers and associated activities that are in the operations notice and kind of already been pre-vetted, definitely encourage you to do that. It'll definitely save a bit of time. So if there's any concerns that HUD has, then you should be receiving either email for corrections that will likely come from your lead. It'll probably come from the field office as they take the lead for the MTW supplement waiver reviews. MTW supplements. And so please, if you have any direct questions, feel free to reach out to your assigned field office. And with those questions based off of revisions that may have been requested, those will need to be done also on the online system. And once you hit submit in the web-based system, you won't be able to actually make any edits to your form until we return it back for revisions. So speaking of revisions, submitting for revisions on the next slide. All right, so you're gonna just begin by, like I said, discussing with your field office if you have any questions, and follow the instructions provided by your field office to update your MTW supplements. And remember that your field office is the lead for your PHA plan and the MTW supplement to your PHA plan reviews, okay? And when it's time to make changes, you're going to communicate with your field office what the form needs, that the form needs to be returned for revision in the system in order to make those edits. Okay, like I said, because if it's in a submitted status, then you won't have access and you won't be able to make any changes or revisions. So let's see what else. If you do have to make changes, also keep in mind that you should be removing any previously uploaded files accordingly. So I would look at the job aid instructions on how to do that. You can reach out to your field office representative. I'm sure they will help you as much as possible by providing information that is also in that workup job aid. But keep in mind that there are different processes for revising or deleting files or activities. So if HUD were to request that the agency revise or delete a file, please read the how to use the system job aid for instructions in that situation. However, if HUD were to request for your agency to revise or delete an activity, please read also the known issues document. Okay, that known issues document is going to be extremely helpful going forward. And this is a good opportunity to just take a look here within the known issues document to see if there's anything that you can get ahead of in advance as you're continue to prepare to submit. And that document is on the MTW supplement webpage. So, all right. Questions? Janet, questions?
Yeah, great. And I think we can open it here to questions about submitting the supplement that we just heard from Crystal, but we can also, if you have things remaining from the supplement process that Autumn talked us through, public engagement. Lindsay, unfortunately, is not with us any longer, but Autumn and Crystal can definitely answer your questions. So either raise a hand or pop them into the chat. While we're doing that, though, I'd like to do a quick question while you guys are thinking. We just talked about that supplement system and how important it is to be really thoughtful about how many people get assigned to participate and get access to that system. How many PHA users can you have on the MTW supplement system? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Is it 3, 5, 7, or 10? Number of users that can get access to the MTW supplement system. 3, 5, 7, or 10? Anybody remember? Okay, we're getting some answers here. We're getting uniform 3s. Crystal, you might want to hit that one again.
You can actually have up to 5. We can have 5 PHA users. I hope that makes everybody happy since you thought it was 3. We have 5 PHA users can have access to the MTW supplement system. Thank you for running that back, Janet. That's amazing. Great.
Absolutely. These are the kinds of details that are easy to miss. There is one question, which is what is the recommendation? So they can have up to 5. Do you think sticking with 3 might be a better idea? Or do you, what's your recommendation about how to choose number of users? And before you speak,
Okay.
somebody said they were just rejected for asking for 4.
Wow. Okay. I'm not aware of that requirement changing. So I'm not sure. Who said it? Gary Blake. Okay. Rejected for asking for 4. Right. Well, to my knowledge, that it's 5 that you could ask for. I would say as far as recommendation, it's much like I said earlier, which whoever you have, who you do grant access to, you're going to want to make sure that they're actually working on the MTW supplement form. And that, you know, we talked about version control before. So not only 100% sure. Okay, well, hold on. Well, let's put a pin in that because I am fairly certain, but I know where to phone a friend. Okay. And to my knowledge, it is 5, Gary, but you were shot down with the 4. So I'm sorry to hear that. And I hope that I didn't give you guys false hope. And there were a number across the board at 3. So, well.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that one after we get firm information from the people at the systems end. So we'll definitely get back to folks on that. And that might be why we got so many 3 answers, Crystal.
Could be, Janet.
All right. Lindsay has a question about whether she missed the answer about where to put the asset building activity narrative. You want to do a quick one on that one?
Right. So with that is a good question. So what I call that is the cohort specific waiver activity, which is the asset building. So if you have any cohort specific waivers that you're implementing, albeit from the selection notice or any documentation that the evaluators of PD&R have instructed you to submit, then you will submit that information on the web-based system, but you will upload it under the agency specific waiver field. So you're not required, I remember this came up in the first training, you're not required to follow the requirements for the same requirements for the agency specific waiver request. Okay, you only have to meet the requirements from the cohort specific waiver. Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, Crystal, if we're not asking for specific waivers for our savings account program, we're just describing what we're going to do, given that we've now had conversations with the research. We submitted our application. We've now had conversations with community partners and the researchers, and our program maybe has changed a little bit. Is there anywhere we need to describe, we're going to pick 25 families and deposit $50 a month for 2 years, and they can do draws here, and we're going to make it available to youth? It's not, we're not asking for any waivers, but it's just, it may be a little bit different from our application. Does that matter? Do you care about that information?
No. So the answer is yes, we do care about the information. Want to know specifically how you plan on implementing and the narrative, just like we talked about earlier, to flesh that out. If you submit it as an upload, I think if we could concentrate more on the naming convention, that would be helpful to the reviewers to know that this is what specifically you're describing. And there's several sections within the web-based form for you to complete those uploads. If you have a more specific waiver, I'm sorry, a more asset building associated like question as to the requirements and what you have to submit in the description, then I'll need to circle back to the evaluators and circle back internally to our team and have somebody be in contact with you. But if your question is, where would you upload that information? You still can upload it within the agency specific waiver section. Does that make sense?
So it'd just be a separate document.
It's just a document that you're uploading. And that's a consistent place that we've been telling everybody is the agency specific waiver. Yeah.
Right, I got it now. Thank you.
That was confusing. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. All right. Any other questions? Just got a couple more minutes if anybody's got something else that is useful to discuss here. While you think about that, let's go ahead and take a peek at a couple of the next two slides, because I have got for you a slew of resources. They are all going to be linked together here on the slide, so you can go to the slides to get to all of these. But I actually have two slides that look a lot like this with all of the resources that you can draw on here. So I'd like to highlight in particular the ones you're seeing here with the little arrows, because as we were going through, you were hearing Crystal say, make sure you look at those job aids. This is where you can get to those job aids. You want to get to the HIP system training page and look for those two job aids on getting started and on how to use the system. I will say that as of this morning, there were a couple of these key resources that had not yet been uploaded. There were some revisions going on. So if you went right this second, they might not be there yet. But if they're not there, there will be a come back later note, and they should be there really soon if they are not there already. Haven't looked for a couple hours, but they are imminent. Also look at the MTW supplement web-based form system PHA demo. That's an actual demo of how to use the system. We really suggest that you save doing that until you are just about ready to go ahead and do your upload into the MTW system, because you'll forget all of the details as you go through, but it's a really, really, really helpful demo. So definitely take a look at it when you get to it. See, the asset building cohort selection notice you know about, you need to take really close look at that, and the MTW supplement page on HUD.gov. That supplement page has got links to all kinds of things you got to make sure you look at. So it's a really important one. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a bunch of different pieces of guidance about very specific parts of completing the MTW supplement. So if you are just looking at the Appendix 2 requirements on safe harbors, impact analysis, hardship policies, there is a specific set of guidance on that. So you can definitely take a look there. Let me pause for a minute and see what Crystal's got for us.
Well, after phoning a friend at REAC, I will say, Gary, you are 100% correct. It is okay. It is certainly 3 now, but it used to be 5, and I'm so sorry if I gave false hope to everyone. But just be very intentional about your 3 that you allow to have access. And I'm hopeful that in the future that maybe it will go back to 5, but the correct answer is 3 PHA users. are allowed to have access.
Excellent. Gary, thank you for the information. And to all of you who indicated 3, you got to check in the plus column. So that's great. All right, so let's go to the next slide so you can get a little look at the next batch of resources. So here you can see these have been divided into a couple of different sections. Top left, you can see reference documents and training documents. So all of the various notices, the HUD.gov page. This also has the links to the MTW supplement webpage and to the MTW online manual, which has got a lot of resources for working through your hardship policy, working through your impact analysis. So all of those provide those in-depth resources on those particular topics. On the lower left, you can see even more granularly how to think about the impact analysis and hardship policies. Those are 2 areas that prior cohorts have found challenging to put together. So we put together some very specific resources to help you walk through those, make sure that you understand what's needed there. So make sure you are aware of those as you put those together. Top right, there's some activity selection resources as you're thinking about what you're going to be doing. There's an interactive training and there's some tips for getting started on how to do those selections. And then finally on the bottom right, we had a very wonderful voice of experience today with Lindsay. There are some others that have been recorded and are available for you. So if you want to hear from others who have gone before on various topics here, you can find them with those links. So with that, I would say let's go to our wrap-up slide here. We are getting ready for moving to our last 2 webinars for the onboarding cohort. The next one is going to be coming up on the 50058 MTW expansion form changes. That'll be on April 5th. That'll really help you get into some of the nitty gritty about what's going on with that form and how you have to deal with that. And then on April 26th, we will be having office hours. If I could have you bring up, Sean, poll number 3 real quick. In order to help us think about those office hours, we're interested in which subjects you'd really most like to discuss in those office hours. There's a list of them in the poll. You can choose as many as apply. Just let us know which of those you have particular interest in so we can make sure that we block some time and create some resources as we go into that April 26th webinar. So we'll leave this open for a couple more minutes as you think about which sections. Make sure you hit that submit button in the lower right so that your information will be recorded. And I will thank you all for your participation in this webinar. Lots of great information. So thank you to Autumn and Crystal for the great presentations, and also to Lindy in absentia for all of her input. You heard that she's quite open to questions. So if you want to reach out to her, definitely feel free to do that. Sean, you can go ahead and close that poll. And I thank everybody for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.